Welcome, everyone. Really so happy to be here to follow up on an initial program that we held in February to discuss nonprofit leadership of color in the nonprofit sector. And what we learned is that we haven't really advanced the needle in the right direction in the past 20 years. So the initial program was great. And this program is an outgrowth of that, how we can dig a little deeper and go a little further in advancing equity in the nonprofit sector. So we are going to have introductions soon, but I wanted to go through some housekeeping and remind everybody to please mute yourself if you're not talking. One thing I always forget to do, but I never forget, is to thank Suzanne Gardos, who makes pretty much everything happen. I would remind yourself again to mute, to probably during this part to put yourselves on speaker view. When you're in what might be breakout sessions, I think we're inching toward 2 breakout sessions because of the attendance, is if you do need to speak, to raise your hand in the breakout session. If you don't have that function, to type something into the chat. So I'm going to share my screen now, and yeah, and then just go through some minor housekeeping, continue to go through some thank yous and some minor housekeeping. Okay, so I'm gonna start here. Here we are today. I'm so delighted to have with us Dr. Alexandria Connally, who worked so hard on preparing for this, and her colleague, Ms Leader. They will be introduced by Maria Imperial, the CEO from the YWCA of White Plains and Central Westchester, in just a couple minutes. The mission of Nonprofit Westchester. Again, we are only as strong as our members. I thank you all for everything you've done during the pandemic. And as we emerge, we know as a sector, we have a lot to go until we address the issues that impacted our clients and our organizations. So we welcome you to join us in our post-pandemic reemerging efforts, and to visit our website to see what we're doing. Again, these 3 organizations and their CEOs have been such generous partners to Nonprofit Westchester in this particular initiative, and really in everything we do. So from the Y, I can't thank Maria Imperial enough. During this time, she's launched the Center for Racial Equity at the Y. I encourage all of you to go to the website and see that. United Way and Tom Gabriel, just the most incredible partner I could hope for. And Terry Kirshner, past president of Nonprofit Westchester, CEO of the Westchester Library System, and another ongoing partner. We're also very thankful to our business sponsors, who during this time have really acknowledged and supported the value of the nonprofit sector. So special thanks to them. Again, please visit our website and see all the great events we still have coming up in July. If you're not a member, why not? You should definitely join us and become a fierce advocate for good and support your sector. We are truly stronger together. And now I'm going to just go through the agenda. I'm going to hand this over to Maria Imperial, and then to Dr. Alexandria Connally and Ms Leader. So thank you all for attending, and it's all yours, Maria.
Before I introduce Dr. Connally and Ms. Leader, I have to do a shout out to Jan for your incredible leadership. You really have been elevating the issue of equity, and it's an honor to partner with you as well. So it is such an honor for me to introduce Dr. Alexandria Connally. As you could read from her very impressive bio on NPW's website. Dr. Connally is the inaugural Director of Equity, Inclusion, and Innovation for the Nyack School District, the founder and CEO of CREED, Culturally Responsive Environments and Discipline, and assistant to Regent Francis Willis, and a proud member of the Lynx. She serves on the Westchester County Youth Board, the Yonkers City Council President's Special Advisory Board, as well as Pace University's Transformative Leadership Program Board. But what you may not read in her bio, and what I want to convey here, is that Dr. Connally is an equity warrior. She is the real deal. There is perhaps no one so perfect to be leading our discussion today on taking action, charting an anti-racist path forward for Westchester's nonprofit organizations. In her article, The Legacy of Greatness, included in A Second Helping of Gumbo for the Soul, Liberating Stories and Memories to Inspire Women of Color, and I encourage all of you to purchase a copy. Dr. Connally writes about the things that her mother instilled in her: the value of education, the importance of being nice and seeing value and purpose in others, and faith. Dr. Connally has been described as having a nurturing but no-nonsense style, earning the respect and trust of her students, her families, and her colleagues, a lifelong learner and a learning leader, the most gifted teacher on campus, innovative, imaginative, and super creative. As an assistant principal, she not only had an open door, but she had a policy of mi casa es su casa. It's also an honor for me to introduce Ms. Leader, who is a consultant with Dr. Alexandria Connally. Isn't that a great and appropriate last name? Ms. Leader is the founder of EFP, Education for Progress, an organization that offers practical steps to promote equity for all children. She currently works as a professional development specialist with the New York State Education Department Office of Special Education, Educational Partnership in the Lower Hudson Valley, and has worked for over 20 years as an early childhood and elementary teacher in Westchester, New York City, and New Jersey. Is everything okay? Hello?
I think somebody was just having some issue with their Zoom, but everything's okay on NPW's end. Thank you.
Okay, I just go. Okay, like Dr. Connally, Ms. Leader's passion is around increasing equity in the schools. This morning, we are in for a treat to participate in this program facilitated by these two wonderful women who will be our breakfast of gumbo for the soul. I now turn it over to Dr. Alexandria Connally. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Maria. Dr. Connally, it's yours.
Good morning. I've had some of those moments on Zoom, so I understand. I'm so happy to be here. First of all, Maria, can you go with me everywhere I go just to introduce me? Like, we can go to Starbucks, you can just introduce me to the barista. That was phenomenal. I actually forgot about that article. I gotta go back and reread it. I am so excited to be here. I am so excited to see so many faces that have impacted my life. And just understand the work that you do is crucial and it's critical. I grew up in foster care, and I was at a rally last night on White Plains. My community saved my life. It was Greg Dusablon at the Y who taught me how to swim. It was the YWCA who taught me we had a debutante's ball. It's the first time anybody ever got me in a dress. It was pretty amazing. I burned all the pictures. But it was really it was Mary Gaines at the Nepperhan Community Center who really instilled education into me. So the work that you all do in the community is sacrificial and it's God's work. So I just wanted to take a minute to thank you for that. We're so excited to be here to have this opportunity to feed into you, those that would feed into what I call like my babies, right? And so Christy is here, and I just want to give her a chance to say hello.
Good morning, everybody. I'm excited to be here and honored to work alongside my friend and colleague, Dr. Connally. So thank you so much for having us.
So Christy is a parent of one of my NIAC students, and if you've known me for 5 minutes, I'm the Oprah of giving out jobs, right? So like you get a job and you get a job and you get a job. So I am happy that she took time to be with us this morning, and I appreciate it. Yes, you may be recruited also. So thank you so much. Next slide, Christy. And so we just, go ahead, Christy.
Sure. We're going to start our day today with some norms. These working agreements really come from Glenn Singleton's Courageous Conversations Around Race. When we engage together in this space of talking about race and equity together, one of the things we've learned, folks like Dr. Connally and I that do this work all the time, is that many of us have really never learned to have these conversations in a productive way. So we feel like it's always really critical to sort of start together, with some working agreements that we all can agree upon. We're looking today to create both a safe and brave space. This used to be a place for a safe space, but we think it's important that people are brave and able to speak up and contribute as much as it is a safe space as well. We ask that everybody listen with respect, that you use I statements. We ask that everyone participate and struggle together today through this work. Expect to feel discomfort. That's my favorite one of all of these. These are hard conversations. Sometimes facing ourselves and our own work can be challenging. Expect to experience that discomfort and just lean right on into it. We do ask that you stay engaged and ask clarifying questions, that you honor the confidentiality of your colleagues today. People may be very open about things that are going on in their programs and fields, and it's critical that we honor that confidentiality here together. Expect and accept a lack of closure. So, we're here to do some work together. Doesn't mean we're going to have all the answers. I highly expect that we will not have anything close to all the answers, but we're going to be collectively working on it. We ask that you push your growing edge and try not to take it personally when people are speaking their truths. We are going to do just a brief check-in, a temperature check, to see how everybody's doing with their feelings as they walk into this meeting today. It could be, things in your life or specifically around your work or not. I don't know if anyone can see the annotate feature. For me, it's up at the top of my screen. There's a button that says annotate. And if you click on that, you can choose a stamp, and then you can stamp the quadrant that you feel that you're in. But if not, if that's complicated, feel free to use the chat, and I'll ask all of you just to take a moment and do that and check in, let us know how you're doing today, how you're feeling. Like I said, either through the annotate stamp button, or you can just check right in through the chat. Oh, people are getting the annotate feature, which is very impressive. And I see a few people in the chat already weighing in. Looks like a lot of people are on this right side here today. Someone's bored already. Hopefully Dr. Connally and I can spice it up for you and not have you stay in that bored space. But I'm happy to see that there's a lot of energy in the room. I see an apprehensive. I appreciate your honesty about that. Often we feel apprehensive when we're entering into these difficult conversations. I see some trusting and worried. I'll give it another minute or so. Burned out, I feel you. End of June, time for vacation. All right, so I'll clear this in a moment, but just realize that as we enter into this work, this is where your colleagues are. So while some of us are feeling excited and ready, some of us are feeling stressed, tired, apprehensive, and burned out. So we'll keep that in the back of our minds as we move forward. And I will clear this. I'm always so impressed with myself when I do great things on Zoom, because I'll tell you, I knew nothing about any Zoom a year ago. And so, we've come far. Dr. Connally, I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you, everybody. I'm looking forward to our work together today.
So we're gonna, after this video, we have a couple more slides we're gonna do together, and then we're gonna go into our breakout rooms. But as we go into this space, we just wanna be mindful that we all are socialized to believe certain things, right? And so the shows that we watch, the bulletin boards that we pass on the way to and from work, the books, the magazines that we read, the books that we read, the teachers that we've had have all influenced our world. And so we often have these biases, right? Whether implicit or explicit biases. Implicit biases show more day-to-day connection. Explicit biases are the biases we know we have. So for example, I am a Patriots fan. It's fine, you can boo me. I've lived in New York all of my life. Even in 2010, when we lost the Super Bowl to the Giants, I'm used to it, right? But that's a bias that I know that I have, which doesn't really impact me in any crucial way. However, the biases I don't know I have really predict my day-to-day behavior and how I treat people. And so this is just a quick video. If you ever saw the show Mixed-ish, it's a spinoff from Blackish around the dangers of stereotypes. So we're gonna show this video. Chrissy's gonna show it for us and just make sure we share our sound. It's a quick clip.
Yep, give me a thumbs up if you hear it once it starts.
Old Navy's This Way Onward program provides jobs and so much more. Been an incredible role model for all those little girls who live in the same neighborhood you grew up in. Old Navy will provide 20,000 jobs by 2025.
Unbelievable. Angry Black woman. Do you know how hard I've worked to be seen as more than just Black or just a woman? I went to law school in the 60s. In my graduation photo, there's someone holding a sign saying, N-word, go home.
What? I missed you.
Seriously. I'm one of the most accomplished people at my firm, and for them to reduce me to a stereotype?
Yeah, I know what you mean. I'm a great father. We're not all on DT time, Barbara. Okay, you know what? It's not the same. I'll just save it for my journal.
Why are you two getting so worked up over some stereotypes? Stereotypes ain't never hurt nobody.
Once again, Aunt Dee Dee was wrong. Allow Dr. Rainbow to explain. Stereotypes come from our need to be part of a group. And in our own groups, we have the ability to see each member as an individual. Whereas we tend to see each outside group as one faceless entity. Innocent enough, right? Wrong. Because of that, we're able to then add on negative traits. That's where stereotypes like Black people are lazy, Jewish people are good with money, and white men can't jump come from. And that can lead to harmful things like racial profiling, the Charlottesville rally, US border camps. So yeah, Aunt Dee Dee was wrong.
Look, all I know is stereotypes are here to stay. So I say just ignore them and move on.
We should ignore them? But they sound like something you say we should fight.
Because we should fight them. The reason they're so dangerous is because the way I'm seen will affect how the firm treats the next Black woman.
Yeah, and the stereotypes against fathers aren't nearly as bad, but still hurtful, but also not nearly as hurtful.
That's why we have to take the power back and always fight them. So, starting tomorrow, my colleagues are gonna get schooled on how I am not the one to be put in a box. They will not reduce me to a stereotype.
And well, I'm just gonna high-five your mom because I can't follow that.
And so just understand that we all have these biases and these beliefs and our belief systems. And so as we go into this work,
Old Navy's This Way Onward program provides jobs and so much more.
I just ask you to open your mind. So we're gonna go into our breakout groups. Christy's gonna have group 1, and you guys are gonna focus on board governance and non-for-profit board of directors. How do we move beyond diversity to inclusion? And group 2 is gonna be with me, capacity building government for foundation funding, and how can we support people of color to lead? All right, everybody, all hands in, hands in. All right, I used to be an athlete. All right, and break. Okay, we're gonna go into our breakout rooms, and I'll see you guys in a little bit. Do we have everyone back? I think we do. All right. Yeah, we have everyone back? Okay, great. So I announced earlier, I think maybe in the breakout room, I don't know if I said it to the larger group, that I was a special ed teacher, right? And one thing that I loved about working with my students is they always reminded me to take time to remember to breathe, right? Breathing is very important. So we just did some really heavy lifting. Do you guys agree? We talked about some really heavy stuff. So what I want to do is I want to take a minute. I want you to put both feet on the ground. I want you to put your hands together like this. I mean, you could drop them a little lower sooner because of Zoom, right? And I want you at the count of 3, meaning 1, 2, 3, you're going to push in with your hands. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3. Simultaneously, you're going to push your feet into the floor. Okay, does that make sense? I'll do it one more time. You're going to take your hands, push them together, 1, 2, 3. At the same time, you're going to take your feet and push them into the floor, 1, 2, 3. You ready? We're going to do this a few times. Hands ready? 1, 2, 3. Release, 2, 3. Push, 2, 3. Release, 2, 3. One more. Push, 2, 3. And release, 2, 3. Okay. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to do neck exercises, which my students taught me this because we sit in Zoom all day. So you're going to look to one side of the room, breathe in, breathe out. Look forward above your computer, not at your screen. Breathe in, breathe out. And to the other side of the room, all the way over. Breathe in, breathe out. Back to the center. Don't look at your screen. In and out. Other side of the room. In and out. Right. Last thing we're going to do is, feel free to steal all of these because I'm pretty sure I did. Last thing we're going to do is we're going to breathe in 4, breathe out 4. So this is what it looks like. 1, 2, 3 in. 1, 2, 3 out. Right? So it's actually a 4 count. You ready? We're going to do that 3 times. Breathe in. 2, 3, 4. Breathe out. 2, 3, 4. Again. In, 2, 3, 4. Out, 2, 3, 4. Last time. In, 2, 3, 4. And out, 2, 3, 4. Does anybody know why we do that? Because when we experience stress, any type of stress, racial anxiety, etc., what happens is our brain receives less oxygen, right? And then we begin, and this is why we get into fights, right? And arguments and things get, so the more excited our brain gets, the less oxygen it receives and the stupider we get, right? So you ever have an argument with somebody and at the end you realize you're saying the same thing? That's what happened to your brain. And so as we breathe, we re-engage oxygen to our brain so we could have more sensible conversations and get work done. So feel free to share that. Do that on your board meetings. They'll like that. I don't know if they will. Don't listen to me. So we're going to do a little bit of report back. Christy, do you want to start us off? Because I think you had the first 2, correct? I'm going to jump in after you're done with the first one because we went there a little bit.
Okay. Jan, are you okay to share our notes and our group? Feel free to, you're muted, Jan. I don't know if you were saying something or if you're
Yes.
talking to yourself, which is fine too.
That I do often, but no, I was muted. Christy, do you want me to share my screen or do you want me?
That would be
Yeah.
great. Thank you. Because I don't have the updated, I have to refresh my presentation to see your notes if you don't mind.
Okay, this was, I want to find the first one, the goal here.
I think it's number 9 there.
Number 9. Yep, it
Those
is.
are our
number-
notes. Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And again, I don't want to, we have quite a list here and I don't want to sit and rattle this off. So I do welcome anyone from our group to share, but we were really talking about the idea of promoting racial diversity and inclusion to our boards and through our board governance. And, I certainly got a lot out of it myself. Before I start, I'm happy to share, but anyone in particular from our group want to share some of the things that we came up with? I don't mind doing it. I'm a teacher too, so I'm really good at wait time. I could be here all day and wait. It's fine. Please jump in though. So we really talked about a few things. I think, we could probably put this into a couple of different overarching themes. The first was really recruitment. And the idea of just kind of getting different people in the room. We were saying traditionally boards have been run by white men, and the impact that sort of has on the hierarchy of nonprofits. Somebody really greatly explained that it's not only just the board governance, but then you tend to see that in sort of the top tier of management as well. And then as you move sort of through the ranks, the diversity there increases, but it's not throughout from top down, bottom up. It kind of begins to separate out. So we talked a little bit about the idea of really actively recruiting change amongst the boards. And we talked about how we don't want to just have people in the room for the sake of having tokenism or just to say, oh, look, you're a diverse person, now you're here and we could check that box. But that, the challenge really is in getting people in the roles that we need from various, diverse backgrounds, and we not just racial diversity, but lots of different areas of diversity. And so we did identify that something that may be helpful moving forward is for someone, and we haven't identified who that someone would be yet. Someone suggested Jan, but she quickly, figured out that probably wasn't something she could do. But I do think it's something great for, you all to revisit, but maybe having some kind of a pool or resource list where, look, if I'm in need of a legal person on my board, I can, look to this resource and find people throughout the county that can contribute in that way, and not just the board getting their friends from the same pool of people all the time. So I think recruitment was piece of it. We talked a lot about board expectations. So, okay, let's say we do a great job and get some people in the door, but is there really sort of inclusion in decision making among the board, and how can we make sure that happens? So board training we talked about, really having people understand their roles and contribute to more than just making a financial contribution or more than just showing up and volunteering. But if we're really looking at the impact of the board, then there needs to be ongoing board training, both explicitly about diversity and anti-bias, anti-racist practices, but also about how they can work to be effective in their governance. We talked about, I'm trying to think what else. There was one more pocket, and you're moving around, Jan, so I can't see. As you flip around, I'm like, wait, where am I? What was I saying? We talked about when we moved into this discussion of diversity versus inclusion, Dr. Connally, I shared that I love this quote that diversity asks who's in the room, but inclusion asks who has a seat at the table. So we really talked about people's ability to make decisions. And I love that it was brought up several times that the board should be informed by the people that the board is serving. So if it's a nonprofit working with children, then student voice needs to be a part of that. If you're working with families with kids with disabilities, then those families need to be at the forefront in informing the work, so that it's not just board down, but there's also the influence of decision-making coming up from the clientele or the people that you're committed to serving. We talked about bylaws and revisiting those things, and mission, and making sure that diversity and inclusion is really explicitly at the forefront of that work, and not just something fluffy that we hope to happen, but that is going to be actionable, that we're committed to as an organization. And we talked about the SMARTY goals and making sure that we have realistic steps and explicit steps towards that. How did I do, group? Am I missing any pieces? Did I leave anything out? Please feel free to chime in.
You did great. And one thing that the members brought up is that one training for existing boards and existing staff is not enough. That training, as you said, Christy, is really the first step. And we need to have ongoing efforts to, make sure that the learning is continuous. And that it supports, supports real change. Sorry, I've been talking a lot the last few days, but you did an awesome job. Thank you.
And I just want to add, only because I see Sharon, you just popped up on my screen when they stopped sharing. So it reminded me of your point, which was so important, but that, the board sort of function creates space for honest conversation, and that we're not saying, oh, we want to hear BIPOC voices. Excuse me, not right now. We don't want to hear what you have to say. That if it's going to happen, it needs to be authentic, and there needs to be, space for that kind of honest exchange. And we talked about that's important in setting up sort of board norms and rules, right? That's not just going to happen organically. You have to be committed to setting up a place where that can effectively happen. So thank you to my group for that rich conversation. And again, please do feel free to add if I'm leaving anything out.
Thank you so much.
That was great. I also think it's just really important to acknowledge the power of boards. So, and what they're committed to. So at NIAC, our board is committed to anti-racist practices, policies, and beliefs. And every one of our board members have attended the Undoing Racism training and ongoing trainings. So there's so many trainings that you can do ongoing, whether it's book studies, webinars, small groups. These things are not, so far-fetched. So you could definitely work with even people within your agency to create. There's probably so much talent in your agency around this to create some of these trainings, but I do think that this work is so important and needs to be done purposefully every single day. So we also talked a little bit about, we also talked a little bit about this, and Steve came up with this great idea about having also these advisory boards, right? Which may not be part of your big board, but they connect you to the community. I thought that was great. Representation, creating metrics around what you want to do and connect, understanding, Chrissy said this, diversity and inclusivity. And also, one thing I shared is often, even if we work in diverse environments, we often go home to people who look like us, love like us, believe like us, think like us, right? And we don't have that diverse kind of relationships. Even if we have one or two people who are outside of that box, that's usually not our whole. And so reaching out to BIPOC organizations, everything from teachers organizations to board organizations is really important. And somebody also just talked about allyship, right? And also keeping that connection. And that full TED Talk, Melanie Hobbs says something like 70% of all boards in America are like white males, right? And she says, what if we walked in and said 70% of all boards being BIPOC people? We would think it was strange. Why don't we think it's strange? Because it's white males, right? And so I just thought that was something to really think about. Okay. So the second one, is this you two also, Christy, diversity and inclusion? Okay. Let's talk a little bit about what you guys talked about. We didn't get to this one, so this is all you guys.
I kind of included it in the last piece.
Okay.
So more just, again, not just having, the diversity in the room, but really ensuring that all the pieces of your community and your population have a seat at the table. And, decision-making powers and abilities, and that decisions and power is influenced by and including, not just one subset of people, but, the community, the people that you're serving. And we talked kind of specifically about how to begin to do that.
That's great. So then we talked about capacity building government and funding foundations, right? Understanding that there's systemic racism that actually works against especially Black and brown people who run not-for-profits. And it's embedded into our culture. It's systemic, right? And so in the great words of Barbara Major, we didn't build this house, but it's all our jobs to tear it down. She's one of the key founders of the Undoing Racism training. And so we showed this quick video, which all of you will get these slides. We showed this quick video, which talked about systemic racism. You may have seen it. It's about Jamal. And then I'm going to jump in, and then my group already is very clear that they're going to support me. We've had this conversation. So we talked about like really understanding agencies to best serve communities. And the overwhelming like thought process was listen, right? Listen in a way that's intentful, active listening, and begin to internalize what people in these communities are saying. Marketing, right, is huge. The stories, I was saying that I'm from Yonkers, and there are 3 community centers within my neighborhood-ish. I took all 3 of them, right? And so all 3 of them taught me something about who I am today, and that was really important. And just imagine if every kid can go through all 3 community centers and turn out to be Dr. Connally, wouldn't the world be a better place? Okay, some of you are shaking your heads, that's fine. But really just understanding the stories of what community, what's non-for-profits do, how they help the community and what they produce. And someone talked, I had someone that talked, she was from, I believe, a climate organization. Like racial climate is real, right? And so, and climate regarding people of lower socioeconomic status, like this is all like in our equity, built into our equity work. We also talking about being out. We also talked about being allies and co-conspirators. To me, co-conspirators are the people that go to jail with you. Allies are the ones who show up with the bail. We need both, right? But really standing up and standing by when things are not going well, and being brave enough to speak up and speak out to say, even if you're a white person, especially a white person, this is wrong. Do not put this person in a box. And then we talked about the struggle of BIPOC people, especially women, who have to like sell themselves all the time, right? And how do we kind of get to a place, where we have to say like, in the great words of our vice president, I'm speaking, right? And it's fine. And so does anyone have anything else to add to this? I will call on you if you don't. Okay, I'm gonna ask Karen if she has anything to say. I don't see her on my screen. Karen, are you still here?
Maybe she had to jump off.
She may have. So, Lacria, you're up. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Okay, ready. I was the person who talked about marketing and telling the story. I think one of the ways that we can think about that, right, in this really distressed economic environment for us nonprofits is really sharing services on marketing. Really pulling our efforts together and paying smaller fees to a great marketing firm to do our good work instead of trying to hire internally, because I think a lot of back of house functions in nonprofits we can outsource. So that's one of the ways that we can try to tackle that and tell the story, building upon what you were saying.
That's great. Thank you so much. Anyone want to jump in?
I just want to share, and Michelle, I don't know if you would want to, I can't see you, so I'm not sure. Would you be willing to share what you were saying about collective board giving and the shift that could potentially make? Or would you rather me? I don't mind, because I'm putting you on the spot.
Problem. So what I mentioned earlier in our group was, we know that we've talked about really kind of maybe revisiting the minimum giving amount, right, for boards. But, coming from fundraising and the reality of looking at a development officer, when you think about reducing that cost, what does that look like? You have to look for that money someplace else. But we know that we do have some of our board members who can give at a higher capacity, while we may have, those talented potential board members who may have the talent but may not have the dollars and cents. So the reality is that maybe what we can do is ask that board member who can give 5,000, maybe they give 6,000, and another board member gives 6,000, to really kind of take that extra 1,000 to put it into that pool and pay for the giving of that board member in that particular way, in that particular opportunity. It goes back to, it takes a village. It's something that we keep saying all the time. So let's, instead of just saying it or maybe just reviewing it in certain conversations, let's put it into action. So at the board level, it takes a village. You come in with, you have a higher giving capacity, give a little extra so that you can bring in this other village member to realize the overall goal. That's what we shared earlier.
Thank you so much, Michelle. And I just think it speaks to the need for intentional commitment by the board, like coming in, that you need to know that this is how we function and we need to be explicit in being committed to that process. And that an idea like that would be part of it. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, that's genius, Michelle. That's genius. Jan?
Yeah, and of course it's genius from Michelle. And I think as a sector, we also have to advocate to get the proper amount of funding for the services we provide. And that is largely due to work with government, that our contracts and our work is reimbursed at a fair and equitable rate. So 80% of the people that work for the nonprofit sector are women. 55% are people of color. I would say that's probably even more than that. And we know that we need to work with government, with business, with the philanthropic sector, with foundations to rely less on fundraising for essential services and more on fundraising to make our services even more incredible. So there's a strong advocacy component, and I think that's really, really important to remember. It shouldn't just be on the boards and the foundations. It needs to be, things need to change systemically in all sectors.
That's great. Great work, guys. So we also talked about supporting people of color to lead. Right, we showed this video, which you guys will see. P&G has a bunch of great videos. We stopped it halfway through. So when you see the guy knocking on the door, stop the video, think about some assumptions you made, and then play the video. And so what we talked a lot about is, again, listening and opportunities, right, and access. And so opening the door for opportunity for people of color to lead, and then how do we support them? What Michelle's talking about is really dismantling systemic racism, right? Looking at our policies, practices, and beliefs, and how we engage that, right? So looking at our policies, we know that Jim Crow was legal segregation, right? So those are our policies, our practices, what we do every day, and then also how we believe, how we think, right? And that's really crucial to supporting people of color to lead. I'm gonna ask Mr. McDonald if he would talk a little bit about like his academy model, because I thought that was pretty awesome. I don't know if Mr. McDonald, you still here?
Yes, I am. My academy model?
Well, the model, I call the academy model, but it's the model that you talked about getting like training in certain areas, like insurance. Right. And
well, I think that would be incredibly helpful for to support people of color to lead. I think it's there's a lot of us out here that are doing the work, and in doing the work, I think the most critical part of the work is setting up your foundation and getting it started, and that needs to be something that we can maybe train people and have a mentor to help assist us that are just starting out. I'm new to this, and I'm glad that I'm part of this space. I think we are having a social impact, but it gets a little intimidating. So if we have somebody to make sure that our foundation is solid, we don't have to worry about our house falling down or missing a step along the way.
Yeah, I thought that, thank you so much for that. I thought that was so important, right? And that goes back to, again, looking at our policies, practices, how do we support people, right? Having these mini courses or academies or the opportunity to learn and grow, right? We also talked about hiring and retention. So not just hiring, but how do we retain people? And when people leave, ask those hard questions, right? Why are you leaving? And what is this specific to? I shared a story that we just changed the questions at my job around hiring, right? The first question usually most people ask is, tell me about yourself. Within 30 seconds, you either have the halo effect or you don't, which means within 30 seconds, you really already know if you're going to hire that person or not. They start telling you about themselves, right? And so what happens is you make the connection with the person. So if the person starts talking about golf and you like golf, then you're like, all right, there's a connection there, right? You do this in your subconscious. So it's not like you're doing this intentionally. And so oftentimes, if you look like me and you walk into a room and you have roots in this country, you're conditioned not to talk about yourself, to be the quiet person in the room, to stand in the back. You don't want to be the angry Black woman. You don't want to say too much, right? We go through our whole lives learning to be silent and not to build ourselves up and not to talk about ourselves. Then we walk into an interview and they say, tell me something about yourself, right? It's not a fair or equitable question. And so I work in a school district and we changed the first question to tell me something, tell me about a time you connected with a child or a family, which this is a much general, broader question. We work in a school district, so we assume that you had some connections to a child or a family, and it takes the pressure off a person, especially a Black female, to have to talk about themselves. Now, clearly, I don't have that problem because my mom tells me I suffer from high self-esteem, but that's fine. But most people who are raised, especially in this country and in other countries who look like me, are often told to be quiet, to be in the back. You don't want to be deemed as the angry Black woman. Don't build yourself up. And then the second we walk into an interview, we're asked to do the exact opposite. So when we fumble, we disrupt the halo effect, right? And so looking at your policies is important. We also talk about racial trauma and healing from it, right? And so we go through this every single day. And so how do we take time to heal, and what does that look like? Because what happens is then we'll burn out, right? My friend Gina Gaines wrote her dissertation on self-care, Black women in self-care, and what she found out in her research is Black women die and have more chronic disease due to toxic stress than any other group of women. And so how do we make sure we're taking care of ourselves? And then I'll just go through two more because of time. Take the Harvard IAT bias test. I talked a little bit about this in my group. I know the results will shock you, will think it's wrong. I share with my group what I got on one test. I won't share that with everybody. I'll share with everybody. So you have to pick between Trump and Nixon. And I'm a historian, so I'm like, definitely Nixon. I get it. He did some things wrong. I'm not, saying he was great, but he did open the door to China, did some other good things. And I got Trump, and I'm just like, are you kidding me right now? Right? But if you look at the characteristics of Trump, like he's a little narcissistic, so is Dr. Connally, thinks highly of himself, so does Dr. Connally, right? So clearly Dr. Connally has some things she needs to work on. So take that test. It's, you need to know your biases. This test has been around for 15 years. For 15 years, this test has been telling us that Americans think that Asian Americans are less patriotic than white Americans. We see what's going on in the world today, and then we go, we never saw this coming. We absolutely saw this coming, right? So take some time to do that. And then intersectionality. Because you see a group of people does not mean that they all have the same world viewpoint. Right. My mom often tells me, like, I have two younger brothers. We were raised in the same house with the same mom, the same dad. We went to the same church every single Sunday. Right. We went to very similar schools. All of our relatives are the same, except one is a doctor, one is a lawyer, one's a music producer. Well, how did that happen? Right. Intersectionality. Our experiences are very different. And so I'll stop there just because I want to make sure that we have a few minutes to close out. Before I shut this down, did anybody from my group what else wanted to talk about supporting colors to lead, people of color to lead? Okay.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Jan, can I say one more thing? I'm going to drop in the, I'm going to stop share. I'm going to drop in the chat. I promised everybody that they would get a copy that they could edit. So take it back to your spaces, your organizations, your communities, and build this chart up. Right. So we appreciate your voices, but we talked about diversity. We want diverse voices. We're going to leave it open for Jan. Can we leave it open for 3 days? So maybe the Friday?
We can leave it open till maybe after the 4th of July because, because I think a lot of people are slowing down, actually. Not us, but people are.
Okay.
So
wait,
do you want to leave?
No.
Do you want to leave it to like July 7th? Would that be okay? Great. Okay. Anything else? Well, I'm almost beyond words. I want to thank Dr. Connally for really planning this out so perfectly. Exceeded my expectations, that exceeded my expectations. Thank you, thank you. Christy, you as well. I thought this was a great conversation. To all the participants here who actually showed up and took the time to contribute. It's really important. And, again, to Maria Imperial and the Y, to Tom Gabrielle and United Way, Terry Kirshner, the Westchester Library System, also to my board member, Michelle Nicholas, who's chair of our EDI internal committee, but, informs everything we do, and to my board members that are on this Zoom. This wouldn't have happened without your support. So the board and everyone here, and Dr. C for just bringing it all home for a grand slam so far. We have more work to do. Dr. C and I will be looking at this, reviewing it, and we're going to publish something in collaboration, working with Michelle, Maria, and other board members. Also Allison Lake, for always informing me. So can't thank everybody enough. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Enjoy the holiday weekend, which is almost upon us. So thanks, everyone.